This is Green Planet, Blue Planet podcast featuring distinctly qualified global change makers that are dedicated to creating a healthier planet, one where diversity is lived, expressed, and celebrated. My name is Julian Guderley. I'm committed to a world that allows people from all walks of life to thrive. And in today's episode, my guest is Louie Schwartzberg. Welcome, Louie.
Great to be here with you.
Yeah, I'm excited. Louie Schwartzberg is an award-winning cinematographer, director, producer who spent his notable career providing breathtaking imagery using his time-lapse, his high-speed, his macro, and many different cinematography techniques. One of my favorite movies that you created, Louie, is Fantastic Fungi. And there's a whole universe, I think, not about on mushrooms, but a movie about mushrooms that allows us to understand fungi, the mycelium, and the ecosystem so much better.
My mission is to discover the language of nature, and I believe nature is intelligent.
There is a world under the earth, full of magic and mystery. It holds the consciousness of nature's connection to all living things.
It was a great story because beyond mushrooms, it's all about the mycelial network underground. It's this beautiful example of a shared economy, not based on greed, where nutrients are shared for ecosystems to flourish. I think it's nature's operating instructions and should be the way we all should live our lives.
Yeah, boom, right on. It's nature's operating system, right? It's organic intelligence. And it's really, I think as humans, we have this way to overcomplicate when we act from separation. And so coming back to that reality where we realize, hey, wait a second, organic intelligence is what's running this whole universe.
Yeah, well, it's kind of obvious. There's 1 trillion cells in your body that are working in harmony, and who's behind all that? Therefore, I think you have to kind of open up your mind to the fact that there is some greater intelligence, perhaps a natural energy that is what we call life, and nothing can be more important than having life be sustainable.
I mean, this is kind of the big paradigm clash that this lifetime has started with for so many of us, right? Is the paradigm between a living universe and the like Newtonian version of reality that's like everything is a machine and we're just cogs in a machine that. And so, as you said, it's pretty obvious, but you've also looked really closely, and you've looked in a lot of different ways that most humans can't actually pay attention unless we have the art of cinematography.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, because one of the things I pioneered was time-lapse cinematography over 40 years ago. There were no cameras that could do it. I had to actually, modify, battery-powered motors to take these old, big, clunky cameras outdoors, also because the old cameras were cameras I could afford. I mean, a movie camera back then was still about $150,000. Film was $100 a minute. So shooting time-lapse was one way for me to film high resolution, but at the same time, feed a sense of wonder. Because what I could do is I could show people the fact that the human point of view is only one point of view, a human-centric point of view of 24 frames per second. This is how we move. It's so different than a redwood tree, which is so different than a flower, which is different than an ant. And to be able to understand it from their point of view, from their metabolic rate, from their time frame, because we could do a deep dive into what is time, but I can, with my camera, really show you it as opposed to talking about, kind of intellectual topics that are very esoteric, like Einstein, what is time? You can get lost in that conversation pretty easy. I can just show it to you. Here it is. Plants grow, they move, the flowers open and close, they do a dance of life. And guess what? It's beautiful. And then why is it beautiful? That's another giant question you have to, do a deep dive into, that it engages you, even though it's invisible to the human eye, So why are we engaged with this energy called beauty? I'm always fascinated with that giant question. And what I've come to learn is that beauty is nature's tool for survival. because we protect what we love.
It's amazing what we don't know about mushrooms. They really are a frontier of knowledge.
You can filter water. You can create medicinal compounds almost on demand.
They have incredible capacity to make things change very quickly. So I am super hopeful.
The psychedelic members of the mushroom kingdom are fascinating.
I have been a guide for around 350 psilocybin sessions.
The most glorious part was that it made me feel more comfortable with living.
And when we know what we love because we see the beauty, then we start protecting it, right? So like that's kind of the quintessence around the age of pollution that we're, I think we're slowly but surely coming to terms with it and turning it around, because we're realizing this pollution will in one way or other destroy our waterways, our soil, and our planet. And so the only way forward is to protect what we love. But you have a very unique and very artistic and scientific role there, which is why I'm having you on the show, and which is what I love watching your work, because you're making a lot of the invisible visible. Humans operate on a certain speed that it takes a lot for most people to stop operating at the speed they operate on, to slow down, right? To change, and then to look at it from another, not just person's eyes, but perspective of life. So yeah, maybe just elaborate a little bit more on making the invisible visible, because that's been the whole body of work behind these decades of slow motion, and also I think high speed does the same, right?
Yeah, it gets you out of your narrow point of view of time, and so what I'm trying to do with making the invisible visible, I think I'm appealing to, I suppose the science part of the brain, which is trying to examine, how things work, and when you slow things down or speed things up, it's a great opportunity for academic research and learning. But at the same time, the artist will ask, well, why does it work? What is the intention behind it? Well, what's the energy behind all this stuff? And when you can combine the two, then I think it brings you into the moment. It makes you present. And when you become present, you become more grateful. And when you become more grateful, you really become one with your environment. I think we call it love, love of everything, love of oneness, love of that bead, love that flower, love what I'm watching, loving the fact that it's going to create, food for me to eat when that flower is fertilized. Fruits, nuts, berries, vegetables, all the healthy food we need to eat comes from this observation of a bee landing on a flower. And the bee is taking pollen, the science of it, the bee's taking pollen to bring back to the hive. The flower is getting a messenger to move its DNA around from one flower to another so that it can mate. But then I always ask the question, if that's the symbiotic relationship, they're doing it unknowingly. It's not like it's a deal like I do this for you and you do this for me. They're actually, I think the bee is just focused on getting pollen back to the hive to feed its kids. And somehow in that process, the flowers have seduced the bee to do that. And how did it do that? It didn't write a contract. It did it by beauty, by color, by taste, by aroma, by composition, by movement. All these things are messages that make the world go round. And that's what I try to film.
Yeah, this is so deeply resonating in my being, because it is, as you say, what literally makes the world go round. There was not ever a human, a president, a country, or anyone who made the world, float around a sun and the sun around a black hole. That's the force of nature. And then on our planet, right, this is taken over literally everywhere. And so you mentioned it actually right at the beginning. This is the much smarter way to do banking, right? Is to operate based on the principles of nature, to follow the pathway of organic intelligence, and you call it beauty, rightfully so, and to exchange based on that trust that that's how life works out. Now, my question for you here is, what does it require for you, Louie, to experience trust? You've made it visible in the plant world and in the world of, a lot of life that is microscopic to us otherwise.
Yeah.
What does it take for you to experience this kind of trust?
Well, I mean, can you define what do you mean by trust?
That's a great question back. I mean, trust is a few different things, right? So I guess it's one of the more complex words we make meaning to. And so my definition would be the process of being in sync with life, the process of actually surrendering to life as it happens, not to you, but actually through you as an agent of life.
Okay. So, well, to be in the flow and to be in harmony is, as I said earlier, nature's operating instructions, because there's really no other way of operating that I can see. I mean, if I'm going to go river rafting, I'm going to jump in that boat. I'm not going to, go upstream. I want to go downstream, right? And if I go upstream, I'm just setting myself up for a bummer. It's going to be, hard. Anxiety, stress. I want to go back to where I started. All that kind of, as opposed to just going with the flow. Even if I was worried about a couple of class 3 rapids that might be around the corner, I'm still going to feel like, let's just do it. It's going to be an adventure. I might fall out of the raft, but so what? Probably won't. So, I mean, that's just, I think it's a process of letting go. The other thing what's taught me a lot about trust is when I do my time-lapse cinematography, which I've been doing nonstop for 4 decades in my studio, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, I'm setting up a shot on the flower bud, and then I trust that it's going to open in frame, that it's going to be in focus, that it's going to look good. I have to lean into that. And that requires perhaps a lot of positive intention. And does that intention influence the flower? Perhaps. I'm here to make you look gorgeous. That's my job. And you're only going to be here for about a week or two. And this is your biological clock is ticking. You need to get fertilized, or you need to get laid. Either way you want to, state that. And I'm here to make you look good. So maybe the flower is leaning into the camera to be able to be as glorious as it can possibly be, strut her stuff, show that she's gorgeous and that, she's ready to be fertilized. And I think that's awesome. Like reproduction isn't really about sex. Reproduction is about DNA moving forward, so that life can continue, life can evolve. We stand on the shoulders of our ancestors. I mean, nature invented reproduction as a genius invention when you think about it, because guess what? Everything in the world wears out. Nothing lasts forever. There's entropy. A mountain's going to wear it out. The sun will eventually die, right? So imagine coming up with a device that could overcome all of that and potentially live on it in perpetuity.
Yeah, that's the process of trust on a much deeper level, right? Is like you call it the DNA leaning forward, the process of life perpetuating itself. The reason why I asked this question is, and you make it sound really simple and you make it sound really easy, but I'm asking this question because I know that this is something that shows up for every human being in their life, especially in this, world we live in, and this paradigm that we, in my eyes, at some point we have to say no to it and move forward and create a paradigm of beauty. And so trust probably also comes through doing this for 40 years and setting up that shot every day for 40 years and just knowing this is what I'm here to do. So maybe we can make that link. I'm not sure. You tell me if that's a link that you see as well. But for me, the raison d'être, purpose, and trust in life connect in a certain way, because a purpose is not something you choose based on what sounds great or fancy on a CV. A purpose is something that you just know, this is mine to do. Like the bee flies to the flower to get pollen for its kids. This is mine to do. How did that process look for you? Because 4 decades later, it's like, oh, of course, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all have a gift, and part of this life's journey is to figure out what that gift is. and then that becomes your mission or your purpose. I mean, studies have actually shown that people with purpose live longer, you know? So I think the key is to be in sync with life's energy. That's really the key. And when you're doing that, then, I mean, think about the fact that, like, right now, you got 1 trillion cells in your body. Who's orchestrating all that? Who's making all that work? I mean, you have to have trust that you have the right number of blood cells, white blood cells, red blood cells, you know, the right amount of homeostasis that's going through your body right now. And you have to, you know, you do trust in that. You don't worry about that, do you? Every morning you don't wake up, think about what is the, you know, pH of my body and this and that. I mean, it's really complex what's happening. And so I consider that trust. I think trust and patience are also kind of related too. You know, that you're kind of letting go and saying, look, I believe, you know, this is what I want to do in my life. I want to serve, I want to create, whatever it might be. And it's not going to happen immediately. You just have to have that intention, and patience and trust, I think, are linked in that way. And that you're just going to, like, envision the end result. Don't stress about all the little tiny steps it's going to take to get there, but, like, realize that if that's your goal and that's your mission, it's going to happen naturally. It'll unfold.
Well said. So let's loop that back into purpose. How did that first occur to you, that that purpose is, you know, finding it is why we're here?
Look, the story of nature is the greatest story to be told. And I want to be my mission, I suppose, is to communicate that story. So any way that I can, you know, make the invisible visible and capture the magic and turn people on really is the only way. Because like, for example, the messaging of the environmental movement, you know, for the past 50 years has been a failure. You know, you put the science on the table and you go, here's what's going on. Here we have to change our behavior. If not, we're going to have, you know, climate change or whatever. And guess what? It doesn't work.
Yeah,
so
letting the scientists be the storytellers is not a good solution.
No, so you have to appeal to the heart. And like, that's what I'm saying earlier. I try to turn people on with the idea that beauty is a gateway for you to fall in love with it, because in truth, we're hardwired to do that. We're hardwired to love every baby. You know, they're all cute. Every puppy is cute. Every kitten is cute, because we're hardwired for life to go forward. DNA wants to go forward. Life is a form of energy. You know, it's unstoppable. But even if we destroy ourselves, it's not going to destroy all of life. I mean, the planet might look radically different in a worst case scenario, but I guarantee that life will be on this planet, whether it's the fungi going underground and hanging out for a while and eating the decomposition of all these dead animals and etc. I mean, that is life. It's been here through all the great extinction events. That's why, you know, it's one of the points of my movie. They were here at the beginning. They'll probably be here at the end. It's the largest kingdom on the planet, and we know nothing about it. Most people
seem to be a part of it, right?
Oh, yeah.
We seem to be directly related with them.
Well, yeah, exactly. Our DNA is more closely related to fungi than to plants. We actually evolved from fungi. We branched off of fungi, you know, millions of years ago. And that's why penicillin is very effective in terms of fighting deadly viruses or bacteria that come into our body, because that's what they do. They got to do the same thing that we do in terms of having a defense against certain, you know, viruses. But what was the question?
The question was all about purpose and trust, right? And so it's natural that we trail off.
Yeah, well, so clearly, I feel I've been lucky that I found, you know, an art form or call it a career, whatever you want to call it. I mean, it's way more than just time lapse and micro and macro cinematography. It becomes a tool to teach people that, you know, this is heaven on earth, and I can show you that. I can prove it to you.
There's something very beautiful in how simple you make all this sound, Louis, because that can only be true if that's been your walk, right? When you walk the walk and you can share it with such a natural confidence, people pay attention, because most humans at a certain stage of their life are in this place of trying to figure out, what can I do? What's my purpose? How do I get there? How do I get where even, right? But how do I do all these things? And then, of course, in retrospect, yeah, time lapse is part of it, and fast, like slow motion and fast captures. But that's really just the tools of making the invisible visible and showing and telling the story of nature. I mean, you said it in the first sentence, actually. That's the real purpose there.
Yeah, I mean, it's one portal. You know, the mushrooms are a portal. Psychedelics are a portal. It's not the end and be all. You know, it's just a tool along that way. And what comes with that, hopefully, is, you know, more compassion, more healthy living, better diet, more conscious exercise. I mean, all the things that are part of you know, wanting to live in sync with nature. I mean, it to me, it just seems so natural. Like I stopped eating red meat when I was in college. I was eating a hamburger, and my buddy comes up to me. He was an African American with this big old afro, and he goes, "Louie, what are you doing?" I go, "I'm eating lunch." He goes, "You're eating a corpse." Boom, just like that, I stopped. You know, I didn't have to do any research. I didn't read any books about, and you know, there wasn't much out there about, you know, plant-based diets. The health food store near UCLA was nothing but a store with a bunch of pills on the shelf. No fresh produce. The health food store was just, you buy vitamins and all these kind of, you know, things. So it's amazing that when the light bulb goes off in your brain, it's just it's triggering a truth, a universal truth that you know. And when you find your path, you're never going to lose your way.
Beautiful. I have a question here. You can say pass if you don't want to answer it. So you just brought up very tangentially the topic of psychedelics. So I'm curious if there's a mindful psychedelic experience that you want to share about or can share about.
Sure. I mean, I think that it's obviously influenced my worldview and it influenced my filmmaking. I wanted to show people some of the visuals that I've seen, and that includes looking at patterns and rhythms of nature that kind of emulate a, you know, mesmerizing, you know, hallucinating visual. But basically, it's just energy, you know, is what you're looking at. I mean, even the word hallucination is weird. You know, it's not really the right word. Actually, I just read an article in Nautilus. It's a science magazine that talked about the fact that looking at light has always been an ancient ritual, like looking at, you know, the glimmer of light reflecting off of leaves or bouncing off of water. Has, in the past, we've lost that knowledge, but indigenous practices was a ritual. And so that's what I try to do. I try to capture that pattern, because what is that pattern? The pattern is a fingerprint of the universe. If I'm shooting sparkles on the ocean, which I love to do, every time I see it, like, I'm just like, where's my camera? So from a scientific point of view, it's like, oh, what you're looking at is, you know, the currents are creating this pattern and the wind is creating a pattern. What's creating that? Well, you know, it's the gravitation of the moon and the gravity of the earth. Actually, it's the gravity of the universe, you know, is making the high tide and the low tide and all this motion, all this movement, all these waves, you know, and you get all these, like, you know, kind of scientific explanations about it. And yet I'm looking at it and I'm saying, it is truth. It is universal truth, you know. And why is it mesmerizing? Because it touches the deepest part of your soul. It is actually a reflection of the cellular activity that's going on inside of your body. The way water moves on the ocean is so different than the way water moves in your body. They can call it thermodynamics or water dynamics. And again, that reductionist, way of analyzing it. But what it's really saying is, I'm one with it all. And then we go back to the biggest problem of all, is that idea of separation from nature. There's us and then there's nature. Well, what I'm trying to do is get people to connect through beauty, which is, let's say, a secret language, to be connected. And you know what? It's easy, because guess what? Nobody taught you what's beautiful. There's no class you ever studied in high school or college, yet in general, most people agree as to what is beautiful. So we're hardwired for it. That's my point. We are hardwired for it. So therefore, open yourself up to it. Don't shut down with it. When people, a lot of times at the end of Fantastic Fungi, some, people in the audience come up when we had our screenings, and there'd be tears in their eyes. And part of me is going, wait a minute, this is not a sad movie. Why are you crying? Because it touched their soul. And it's a place they haven't been in a long time.
In a time where people don't hang out there quite a lot, because this reductionist scientificism is so ever present, right? We as I grew up in Germany, I live in Canada now. So and I know these two cultures very well, and a few other cultures, and everywhere this intellectual, and call it intellectual masturbation, seems to be a thing. It's pretty pointless. And here I am recording a podcast, but it's actually about that. It's about understanding deeper those people like yourself, Louie, who simply embody the call of beauty, that this call of truth that you mentioned with the sparkles of sunlight on the ocean, and walk that into the loud and seen space.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're actually, we have a clinical trial going on in Santa Monica at the Pacific Neuroscience Institute, where I'm showing my rhythms and patterns of nature as people are coming on to psilocybin to treat alcohol addiction. So we're beginning, I think, to really crack this a little bit. Now again, it's going to happen inside the walls of a medical institution, but at least I'm bringing, the power of nature inside, especially for people that are suffering, and I believe, and I know it's true, that as I've gotten hundreds of comments on my moving art series on Netflix, everything from parents saying they had a major breakthrough with children with autism, to teenagers that are suicidal, to people that are stressed out, to people that are having an operation, cancer, palliative, end of life anxiety. They all claim that, oh my God, your programs are a healing modality, or it saved my life. And I've never made a claim that it was. And we have no narration. It's just music and imagery. And here they're, making all these statements that it's a healing modality. So when you kind of take a pause for a moment, you go, look, we got healing modalities for every sensory receptor except vision. We have massage for touch. We have aromatherapy for smell. We have, music, for hearing, healthy food for taste. And I say, what is there for vision? When 80% of the data you get comes into your eyes, it's by far the most important sensory receptor. And now with all the screen time that people are doing, it's even more important.
It's a big overload of information.
And why can't we have medicine, for our eyes? The eyes are an extension of the brain. I mean, electrical energy goes right into the retina, direct connection to the brain. The eyes really are an extension of the brain. They're really not separate.
Yeah, that's very powerful. Thanks for the shout out to the clinical trial there. I believe that's a very important part of the cultural renaissance, right? The regenerative renaissance that, is starting to build a wave. I think we're not quite at the crescent of it yet, or the apex of it, but it's starting to happen, right? Many people are realizing regeneration is just a principle of nature. It's nothing we're making up, like the word sustainability or all these greenwashing terms. They've been so closer to this intellectual masturbation, and regeneration, like organic intelligence. These are parts of life.
Yeah.
You say it very eloquently. I'm curious here, Louis, because we talked about beauty and awe and capturing the invisible to make that visible. What about moments of discomfort or things that are uncomfortable, things that are actually annoying, that show up in the process of creating art, right? How do you deal with those, and what's your way through back to patience and presence?
Well, I think there's always going to be hurdles and obstacles, but maybe it just makes you stronger. Look, my parents were Holocaust survivors, so whatever they went through is mild. I mean, whatever I'm going through is mild compared to whatever they went through, clearly, and so that gives me a lot of courage to bulldog my way through it. But also, I believe that it builds resilience. I mean, we talk about symbiosis, we talk about all these, magical connections, but no, I mean, nature is at times, brutal, and hard. And I think resilience is a evolutionary trait. And and people actually who practice gratitude turn out to be more resilient. And you have to ask that question, why is that? Well, because when a bummer happens, you don't take on that victim role and you don't go into a funk for a couple of days, you bounce back. And the same thing happens in nature. If an animal, twists its ankle, I mean, you're running up a hill or something, it's not going to lay there and cry. It's going to, keep going. And eventually it'll bounce back faster. I mean, athletes do the same thing. When you get an injury, you just got to work it out. You can't baby it. So I'm trying to, I guess, give examples of how you just got to push your way through it. I mean, nobody ever said that this life journey is going to be easy. And I think that it builds character to have, rejection and to have obstacles. And, it's actually, you can employ a lot of creativity to figure out a way around it. A lot of times I've been blocked. I mean, Fantastic Fungi really wasn't accepted by any of the major film festivals. No distributor really thought it was going to ever have a chance in the theaters. And we proved them wrong. It's kind of like, oh yeah, I'll show you. Right? I mean, I got the mushrooms behind me. All I got to do is activate the mycelial network. The first screening we went to was like a fundraiser up in Oregon for the, to decriminalize, psychedelics in Oregon. And it was a fundraiser on a Sunday afternoon. I agreed to go up there, and show the movie, and didn't expect much. I show up at the theater. It says, Fantastic Fungi in the marquee in big bold letters, sold out. No marketing, no advertising. On the Sunday afternoon, we sell out 1,000-seat theater because they posted it on their Facebook page. I'm going, WTF, right?
Right. Know your audience, right? Understand where the people that love mushrooms hang out.
Yeah, I mean, there's something happening here. There is a movement. And I'm proud to say that maybe we helped catalyze the movement. We didn't create the movement, but there is a movement. And it's great that we're a part of it. So the last 2 months, we've been mentioned 3 times in Vogue for inspiring fashion, Again, that's not something I
would have known that the fungi inspire fashion, but it ultimately makes sense, right? Coming back to the core of our conversation here, making the invisible visible and the art of nature visible. Of course, the art of nature, when you for the first time ever see these sped up moments where you see the mushroom kind of burst and then grow its coat or a skirt or whatever, some of them have, that's mind-boggling. That is a trip in itself. You don't have to, you can just watch and be like, yeah, right, that is how I come back in the next morning and that flower or that plant or that fungi is suddenly grown. But because we can't see it, our mind just kind of breezes over it, right?
Yeah, even normal vision is a miracle. There, the visible light spectrum that we're able to see, from ultra blue all the way to red, and that's it. But beyond red is heat waves. I'm sorry, and beyond blue is ultraviolet, and then there's microwave, there's X-ray. So basically we see like only one octave on an 8-octave keyboard. There's all this light energy we don't see. Just vision itself. Normal vision is a mind blower when you think about it. So we're surrounded by this energy, this sea of energy constantly, regardless of slowing it down or speeding it up. So I think it's like we just have to kind of wake up and be filled with wonder and amazement and recognize that what we don't know, and what we don't know is the fact that it's a gorgeous mystery. Maybe what we don't know is this is heaven on earth. Hello. Why are we
very well
drilling?
be if you
Why
look
are we
long
drilling
enough.
holes in the ground? Maybe we're poking holes through the cloud. Like, wake up! Like, didn't you realize you're in heaven? What if you went to heaven and then you started to become an oil driller, and started polluting, and people going, "Wait, you're in heaven, dude." It's like you don't do that here. No. This is the way this is the way life goes, and this is the way it's always been. I mean, you're like,
And maybe it hasn't always been like that. That's the next surprise for many people, right? Is
exactly.
Like,
it hasn't always
you're
been
very.
this way.
It's very
Yeah.
beautiful how you get to these. I can feel like that's just naturally so for you, and I know many people listening will really appreciate that, because this is also a bit of the attitude we need, right, on the path forward, is to be like, wait a second, like this never made sense. These old excuses that there's always been this way, let's just throw them out the window, and let's remember who we truly are. We're a miracle that we're alive in the first place, and we're all of this energy embodied in this human form, and we get to play here. I mean, and you said there's a movement, and maybe you helped catalyze it. Like, for sure, there was a catalyzing effect through Fantastic Fungi. And I think the movement really is multiple parallel movements, realizing that they're not separate from each other, realizing that as a unifying movement, the people that meditate, the people that love planting food, the people that love permaculture, the people that get that pollution isn't the right way, but that aren't against it, that look for new ways, right? Smart entrepreneurs who want to build a world that is heaven, people that want to legalize and decriminalize psychedelics. Like, we're all in the same movement, because we're in the movement of making this earth worth living on.
Right. Yeah. And it's about time. I mean, look, we all felt that since I'm older, like back in the 70s, we created Earth Day, and again, like I said, why haven't we changed our behavior? But everything we said is true, like the whole idea of, organic farming, permaculture, get off of fossil fuels. I mean, this all goes back even before Earth Day in 1970, right? And then Richard Nixon declares the war on drugs. Hello, here we have a criminal who had to leave office for for cheating and lying, and and he creates this, he makes mushrooms and LSD illegal. Are you kidding me? It was never illegal before. It was the cutting edge of science. It was the cutting edge of all the research at Stanford and at and at Yale and Harvard, all these like academia. It was like, this was, oh my God, this is amazing. And so we're still living from the residue of that. The whole idea of mass incarceration of people of color, because one idiot called Richard Nixon, who wanted to get back at his political enemies, the anti-war movement, the quote unquote hippies, weren't really hippies. They were just people that are saying, we want a better world. We don't believe this bullshit. We're not going to go, to Asia and kill people and, or come back in a box. I mean, I'm not signing up for that, right? I mean, I just hope that younger people don't take the time to go back in history 50 years. You should go back even further than that. You should go back millions of years and really look at things. But even 50 or 60 years ago, this is what was going on. The psychedelic revolution exploded. The whole idea of openness, of racial justice, all of this exploded, and I think it's coming back in full circle.
It definitely looks like that. I do have two more questions for you, Louie, and they're both related to these future generations, or the younger generations, as you just mentioned them. And so, question number one would be, if you could, alone or with all the experts that you can call in, change the education system at large, what would you do?
Have them go into the laboratory called nature, I mean, get out of the classroom. Take a look at what's under your feet. Do you realize in a handful of dirt, there's 1 million microbes? You know, we were talking about earlier, there's every second, there's 1 billion interactions occurring. That is the foundation of life on Earth. And we know nothing about it. Even Nobel laureates know nothing about it. I asked the question, where does soil come from? People don't know the answer. You know, it comes from, fungi that break down organic matter, break down rock. It's not dirt, it's a living thing. When we eat plants, we are eating soil.
Yeah, that one, I'll let that one sink in deep. It's so important that we understand by simply being in nature. My last question for this recording has to do with, the heart and the vision that you've shared so much about in this interview that carries forward. So the question allows us to zoom out on the timeline a little bit. We were kind of dovetailing around defining time earlier, but then we stepped away from it. So my question is anchored in thinking 7 generations into the future, knowing that we are ancestors for the future. Louie, what's your dream? What's your vision? What's in your heart that you are here to pass on for the future generations?
I think, again, living in harmony with nature and protecting what we love. Given the fact that we're hardwired to do it, I'm not asking you to recycle, do this, do that, drive an electric car. I'm not doing any of that, because I think if you love it, you'll make the right choices. Your choices is the most powerful form of energy on the planet, what you choose to do. So if you love something, it'll only be natural that you don't take a bunch of paper and throw it away if you love trees, because it'll hurt your heart, and you don't want to hurt yourself. You don't want to feel bad. So get in alignment with that. And then you won't even have to think about it. It's all natural. You'll do the right thing. You make the right choices. And every choice you make, every bite you eat, every, mile you drive has to be a conscious decision for 7 generations out.
I hope may it be so. Thank you so much, Louie, for your time. Thank you for this interview.
Pleasure. May the spores be with you, brother.
We can heal the planet. We can build the future. And our world is fantastic.